Amit, what do you think? What have you heard they discussed, agreed upon, or came close to agreeing upon?
In the tactical level, they wanted to actually set the terms for the ceasefire, in which half of the live hostages would be returned to Israel in exchange for 60 days of ceasefire. In the most strategic level, I think what they discuss is Iran and normalization, a war with Iran. What comes next if Iran tries to actually resetting its nuclear facilities, and on the other hand, how to reach normalization with as many Arab countries as possible, especially Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, and Indonesia. Those are the four countries, the four Muslim countries that are considered to have the highest chances of joining the normalization with Israel.
Well, I hope that comes to pass. Now, I want to know if there's a political impact of Netanyahu being the only person who's been here 3 times in 6 months, and one of a very small group of people that includes Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher, who had absolutely ironclad relationships with an American president who was not American. Does this impact Netanyahu's political future in Israel?
It actually helps him. And Netanyahu used to have two dramatic assets in the eyes of the Israeli voters. One is being Mr. Security, and the other one is being Mr. Diplomacy, Mr. United States. He's fluent English, which is a bit better than President Trump, in my opinion, and he's in full control of the U.S. political arena. Now, as for security, he suffered a huge damage following the failure of October 7th, but he slightly recovered, or not that slightly, following the successful war against Iran. So there is a challenge for him in terms of security. In terms of diplomacy, especially with President Trump, Netanyahu enjoys a dramatic gap, a qualitative edge over his opponents, and maybe it would pay. We can probably see it in the polls to come.
So the big question for me is, does Israel address, in the aftermath of the conclusion of the war in Gaza, does it address its fundamental domestic problems, which I understand? I don't get involved in other countries' domestic politics, but your Supreme Court is completely unchecked and is one of a kind in the world of rule of law systems. And your Attorney General is a position without parallel anywhere in the world, given the power that she purports to assert. Do those two issues get resolved in the near term, because they are outliers in the community of civilized countries?
I do hope. By the way, in Bangladesh, they have something similar, but not something, I mean, it's not a club you want to join. It's utterly crazy, in my opinion. Yet, I think for the center left in Israel, it's not about the Attorney General or about a law. It's about their feeling that the Supreme Court and the Attorney General function as the U.S. Senate. It's the second chamber of the parliament. It's like the House of Lords that keep their democratic values, because there is a tension in Israel between being Jewish and being democratic. Now, the center-left believes that if the Supreme Court is weakened, so Israel would cease to be a democracy. In my opinion, it's ridiculous, but I don't underestimate the feeling of being traumatized and worried. So I think there should be a consensus on the way of changing things. For instance, having it incremental, relatively slow, with a wide consensus. I think it's possible following the next election, and I think it's going to happen.
All right, my last question, Amit. I'm an old guy, and so I look at that generation rising, comparing to the generation that I went through. I worked for Reagan in the White House back in the old days. I'm very optimistic about American politics on the center right. We've got not just J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and Tom Cotton, but there are a lot, there are a lot of people who've got a lot of talent. Do you feel that way about Israeli politics, or are you going to have to wait for the generation of warriors who are now in the field to mature before you feel that way?
Absolutely, yes. And more than this, whereas in the US, there was a belief for many, many years that the Democratic Party is demographically expanding while the Republican Party is shrinking, In Israel, it's exactly the other way around. Demographically speaking, you have the right wing grows way faster than the center left. So you see a process in which the right wing gets bigger and bigger, which would make it very, very convenient for the next leaders of the right wing to form a coalition. And, leadership would emerge, especially from the battlefields. You have many great commanders that have such an experience that Israeli commanders didn't have for the last 80 years because they have been fighting for the last 21 months. So I think yes, there are people to look up to, and we'll hear about them soon.
Okay, very last question. In terms of the Haredim, the last mass casualty event in Gaza was, I believe, ultra-Orthodox troops. I didn't even know that they were operating in Gaza, but a number of them were killed. Does that debate settle down in the aftermath of that with respect towards the ultra-Orthodox, or does it accelerate given that it's 7 versus 450 soldiers killed in Gaza since 10/8?
That's the weakest point of the right wing, because a big part of the right wing is the ultra-Orthodox party, the Haredim, and 90% of them do not serve in the Israeli army. And 50% of them do not take part in the economy, in the workforce. And this problem must be solved as soon as possible. And this is something that can be changed following the next election. I do not believe in only sticks or only carrots. I believe in a combination. And I think it must happen if Israel wants to survive, because we need a bigger army and a bigger economy in order to fund this very unique situation in which 8% of the GDP go to fund actually the anti-missile system, the most sophisticated weapons on earth, etc. So I believe it must be solved, and the sooner the better.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.
It's Chris Stigall, and you're watching The Answer Now TV.